Hello everybody, my name is Khaled Siddiqui, and in this video I'm going to teach you how to replace the micro USB port right there in a Garmin NUVI CamLM. And let me show you how badly this USB port has been damaged. See that? Let me zoom into this. As you can see, the port is completely destroyed. Even the metallic ring around the micro USB port is damaged. This needs to be replaced, and we have to remove the memory card. Make sure to inside the memory card there could be important data worth more than the actual unit, so that's very valuable to be removed. It could be saved places, it could be all kinds of important information inside the memory card. So we have 4 screws on this, 1, 2, and 2 on the other side. So these screws need to be opened, and the screwdriver for this is star-shaped screwdriver, and it is T6 is the size. Now the X40 that you see on the right, T6 X40, the X40 is actually the length of that tip, which is 40 millimeter. The 40 stands for 40 millimeter or 4 centimeters. So we remove these screws, we remove the other one, and once we remove both screws, we have to remove the other 2 on this side. Nice and easily. You have to be very careful not to strip the screws, and also make sure that your screwdriver is the correct size, because if it isn't the correct size, what happens is that you will strip the actual screws, and then you will have a hard time removing it. Now, the back panel gets separated from the front panel, but you cannot force it. You have to do it very carefully with your fingernails or a plastic prying tool. I'm gonna be using my fingernails to spread them apart, but you could use a plastic prying tool as well. Keep in mind that the screen cable is attached, so you can't pull it apart at the rapid speed, because if you do that, that excessive force could break the screen cable. So you have to do it very carefully, very carefully. You could use that like a guitar pick or a coin to insert the coin in the middle of that notch and then pull it apart. I'm going to be using my nails because my nails are strong enough, but if your nails aren't strong, don't do this with your nails. So let's see if we can get this thing apart. Okay, there it is, coming apart. Very good, very good. I'm gonna slide it down. There it is. Okay, now watch carefully and you will see the screen cable that I was talking about. So watch it carefully, because this is where you're gonna see that cable. That's the cable right there. See, if you pull it with a force, you will break that cable. So you have to do it very gently. So I'm gonna use like a dull knife or something to separate the front from the back. But you need to, like a flat head screwdriver is just as good. You need to use those to separate them. There it is. It has been separated, and we have to remove the cable. Now the cable, it's very important to know. Let me zoom into that cable because you don't see it very well. It's very important to know what to separate. So you see that brown tab? That brown tab flips open. It flips up to release the cable. So that's what you need to do. You need to flip it up. So I'm gonna flip it up. You could do it, and also you have to do the flip up. You have to do it from the center, either not from one edge or the other edge, because the whole plastic will come apart if you do that. So I'm gonna do it from the center. So watch my fingernail how I do it. Just like that. Yeah, just like that. You remove it, and you should be good to go. Now the cable is released. With a slight push, the cable will come out, or a slight pull, I should say. the cable will come out. And that is the connector. Right now the connector is in the open position. Right now it's in the open position. We must unplug the battery too. See, that's how it closes and opens. The speaker shouldn't have come out because the speaker should be glued. That's all the glue around it. It should be glued to the front panel or the back panel. So the glue must have been weak is why it came off, because that shouldn't have come off. And the microphone, this unit has two microphones, one for the front, one for the back. And this microphone right here it goes right there in that hole. And normally that the microphone has a green tape over it. For some reason the tape wasn't there. They must have forgotten to put it from the factory. And that is the micro USB port that we need to replace. That micro USB port has anchors all around it, like 4 anchors on the sides and then the connectors on the back. So that is not going to be an easy task, but we will do it. We will do it. Let's see. Now we have to unplug this, and also the other flat ribbon cable that I unplugged, that is the camera cable. The camera needs to be separated. The battery needs to be removed. The battery is glued to the panel, to the back panel, so it's just glue. All you have to do is just pull it up and it will come out. There's nothing to worry about. Just simple glue is all it is. And that is a T5 screw to remove, T5 screwdriver to remove the board from the back panel. So you have to open all 4 screws. Let me go from a different angle there, yeah. So you open all 4 screws, and remember that the speaker wires and the other microphone wire needs to be desoldered. The speaker wire needs to be desoldered, and the other microphone wire needs to be desoldered. Otherwise it will break. And the microphone and speaker wires are polarized, so you have to make sure that red goes to plus and black goes to minus. And you can use a marker to mark it which one was where, so that you can put it accordingly. Also, there's one more screw underneath the metallic plate where my thumb is. There's also a screw underneath that. So I'm going to desolder this and mark the red and plus and minus on the board, so that when I put it back, this is soldering flux that I'm using. Soldering flux, it creates a lower melting point for the solder when you put flux, and it will basically melt much easier. So that is the plus and minus I was talking about, plus and minus, so that I don't mix it up when I come back. Oh yeah, I'm pulling, but I just realized that there's another screw underneath the metallic shield right there, the big metallic shield that's right next to the battery. So I need to open that metallic shield in order to have access to the last screw that's holding the unit together. So I'm going to be getting a prying tool to remove the shield. So you lift one edge of the shield, and once you lift it up, it will easily come up. There it is. It just left one edge of it, and there's your last screw right there. So you need to open that last screw. And there the board came loose, but we are still not out of the woods, because we have to disengage the microphone wires and unplug the camera assembly. So the camera assembly has been unplugged, and now we have to do the microphone wires. As you can see, the microphone wires, the plus and minus signs are already marked, so there is no need to use a marker to mark it. The microphone wire removal is important because when we heat up the unit to remove the micro USB port, the microphone wire might get damaged or melted, so it's important to take it out of the way and securely set it aside. Okay? So in order to remove the micro USB port, we have to cover all the surroundings with high temperature tape. We cannot have hot air. We are going to be removing it with hot air. There is no other way to remove this with regular soldering iron. It has to be hot air system. And in order to prevent the hot air system from damaging everything else, we use a very high temperature fiberglass tape. These tapes are very expensive, but there is no other option. So I'm gonna use that high temperature fiberglass tape, and I'm gonna create, I'm cutting the edges to create like a little square hole for the connector and cover everything else like that. So I'm going to be like protecting everything else, so the hot air will only shoot at the connector. It will not damage the micro SD slots on the right and left, or any other small, I mean really tiny components on the board, such as resistors and transistors. All of those need to be protected. Actually, I need to go a little back. This is too close to too close. It doesn't cover everything. Yeah, this is much better. This is much better. See, so basically everything is being exposed that needs to be heated. What is not supposed to be heated is not being exposed. So let's bring the heater now. Oh, by the way, you need the NC191 30cc is the size, but NC191 paste, because this paste will make the removal easy. The paste gets so hot that the paste itself will help in melting the solder. This is something you can buy from Amazon or eBay. It's not the cheapest paste, but you know, this is the heat gun I'm using. I bought this off of eBay. That's the model number right there. So, you know, that's what I'm using. You have to be very patient. Make sure your heat is distributed evenly, and as you are heating it up, you have to pull up with the pliers, and before you know it, voila, your connector came off. Now you have to do the cleanup. There's a lot of solder that needs to be cleaned up, and yeah, so that's what it is. Now this heater tool is about 150, give or take, depending what kind you buy. It's not super expensive, but it's not very cheap either. Like, it's not something that you could go buy for $10-15, the heat gun. But if you are a technician and you're doing this kind of work, that's a great tool to have. But if you're an end user, maybe spending all that money to buy those tools may not be worth it to fix the GPS. You could get a new GPS. So now we're going to clean up the holes with a solder sucker and go from there. So in order to use a solder sucker, it's a good practice to put some of this paste that I showed earlier, because like I said, it will soften the solder and it make the solder much easier to remove. And when you heat it up, it will basically melt at lower temperature, because the actual the liquid, that the actual paste, helps with the melting. It reduces the melting point of the solder. I seem to be having a problem with getting a good angle so you can see without my tools blocking the view of the camera. So that's where I'm struggling here to see which view is the best for you to see without me blocking the image. So you want to make sure to put enough of that solder paste so that you don't have a bridge. A solder bridge is your worst enemy. Now we will use a sucker. This is the solder sucker. So you have to heat it up very well in order to suck out the excess solder and clear the holes where you're going to be inserting the new micro USB port. Okay, so all the holes seem to be pretty good, and now we should be able to insert the new micro USB port in its place. Now the micro USB port you can purchase from eBay. I bought this whole set. Let me show you. This whole set I bought from eBay for like 20 bucks or so, but it has every variety you can imagine. But let me tell you, this isn't all the varieties available. There are like nearly three times more varieties than what you see in this collection. There are a lot of varieties, so you have to choose the one that fits, matches the one that you took out. This appears to be the one on my finger, appears to be a close match but not exact match. This one is not exact match either. Let's see, what else do we have? This one is exact match. Yeah, so that's the one I will be using to solder. So we want to make sure that we align. We have to align it correctly. The pins on the back and everything is aligned correctly, and then you just apply a little bit of solder on one anchor point, or on one leg only, just one, and then you fine tune to make sure the pins match on the back. And if everything matches perfectly, in this case it does match perfectly, now I'm going to go ahead and solder the other ones. This is a wrong camera angle. Let me see if I can. Yeah, so that I had to add a little bit of paste because it wasn't really melting. Yeah, you have to add a little bit of paste so that your solder could melt easily. It's hard to choose the right camera angle so that you can work easily and you could see it yourself, and at the same time the camera can see it without blockage of the view. Yeah, so that's the one of the challenges I'm facing. And now on the back you have to use a lot of that paste in order to make sure there is no bridge. Solder bridge means that 2 points will join each other with this unwanted solder connection. That's called a solder bridge. And the solder bridge is a very common thing when you're soldering something which has pins. The pins are very close together, like a small IC chip or a small connector like this. So you have to use a lot of that liquid and basically run the solder through it very, very carefully so it doesn't develop a solder bridge. So watch how I do it. Like that. See how I do it? I go in between them and make sure that each one is perfectly soldered and none of them are loose. And then what I'm going to do is, in order to if you have doubts, if you think you can't see very well if they got soldered or if it's still loose, what you can do is you can use a needle and push the pins and see if they're moving, then you know that it isn't soldered, because it's so small that with naked eyes, even with magnifying glasses, you will not see if there's a loose connection, or if somewhere the solder isn't making a good connection. You will not be able to see that with naked eyes. So that's why I always use a needle, with a needle, a small needle. You see the needle? Very, very, very small needle. And I push the pins right and left just to make sure they're not moving, and they're all connected and they're not moving, and that is good. That seems to be connected and not moving. That's good. Once the soldering is done, you have to clean up the area. You can only use isopropyl alcohol, and it has to be 91%. The 70% alcohol that you get from the store has a very high concentration of water, nearly 30% water, and water is not good for your circuit boards. So use 91% isopropyl alcohol, and that's the type of alcohol is in that electric toothbrush. I'm using an electric toothbrush to clean it off, and using a microfiber cloth
so
to
that it
dry
doesn't
it.
create
Static.
static
There's no
electricity.
humidity left.
By the way, all this job you have to.
Okay, so now the surgery was successful. The patient is in the recovery room, and now we will reassemble it and put it back together. So the first thing we need to do is we need to plug in the camera flat ribbon cable. That's the camera connection for the whole camera circuit. And you plug that one in. And the actual camera lens, the power button, actually the flat cable on the top is not for the camera. That's the power on off button. So the other flat one on the top, that one is the power on off button. The bottom one that I just plugged in is the camera, and that one you have to make sure it's securely plugged in. And the microphone that faces the back of the GPS plugs in right there. This is the microphone that records incidents, records events. Basically, this microphone is for the camera. The other one is for the Bluetooth, for you to speak to the Garmin and do your own voice commands. There are two microphones for that reason. One belongs to the camera, the other one belongs to the GPS as a Bluetooth microphone, which you can use your GPS as your telephone external speaker and speak to people through the GPS. That's the microphone that's facing the front. And the other one is the microphone that will record traffic incidents and crashes and whatnot, God forbid. So now we see all of the unit is seated properly, and we will insert the screws. We have 5 screws to put back in place. We do one at a time. Let me get it from a different angle. So we have to resolder the speaker wires. That's something that we shouldn't forget. And there we are putting the other screw. Choose a different angle so you can see better. Now it's the time to solder the speaker wires. After we are done with the screws, we will solder the speaker wires. There are 2 more screws left to be inserted. Oh wait, 3 more screws. There's one at the bottom too. 3 more screws. And one more screw by the power on off button cable, ribbon cable. we put back the metallic shield. And we put back the power on-off button ribbon. So that you see that little black tab, the black tab flips right and left. When you flip it up, that is when it's open, and when you flip it down, that's when it's holding the cable tight. So you make sure the cable is all the way in. You can't have the cable halfway in. Make sure it's all the way in, and then you close that tab. Watch that. Bingo. Now it's all tight. Now we're gonna zoom out so you can see the rest of the reassembly. All right. So the soldering and plugging back in the battery connector. Those are the two things that are left to be done. Plus goes to the red one, and minus goes to the black one. In other words, the red wire goes to the plus and the black wire goes to the minus. And now we will plug in, we will solder the microphone. Same thing, red and black is plus and minus. It's a good idea to put some paste because it's very hard to melt these solders when there is no paste. Okay, now we plug in the battery cable, and last but not least, the LCD screen. The LCD screen, I'm gonna have to zoom in because it's a little tricky. You have to pay attention and see how it comes, how it gets plugged in. I'm gonna zoom in. So the brown tab, currently, as you can see it, the brown tab is in the open position. What you do is you plug in the cable and make sure those two lines, the white lines, are parallel with the plug, with the connector, and then you close the tab. And that tab almost covers the entire line, almost. That if it does cover it almost, that means the cable was in all the way. So this is where the microphone goes. This is the little microphone facing the front. This is the microphone responsible for the Bluetooth. And the little green tape actually should be on top of it so it doesn't come loose. I mean, it's not gonna come loose, but you know, that's what the green tape is for. And then we're gonna put it back where it belongs. Now when you close it, it will snap back in place. But before you actually put the screws, make sure to test it, because you never know if your surgery was successful or it wasn't successful. Alright, so here we have the cable. We will plug it in, and as soon as I plug it in, it should power up, and if it does, that means the surgery was successful. Voila, there you go. The unit works flawlessly, and it was a successful surgery. I hope you learned a thing or two from this. If you did, please make sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I appreciate your time.